For my mini lesson, I decided to focus on something I was currently seeing in the writing of all the students I was working with. In all 3 grades, students' writing contained tons of run-on sentences. Students would combine 3 or 4 sentences into one. I struggled to read through a lot of their essays because their run-on sentence use was so bad. I designed this mini lesson with the concept of being in a writer's workshop setting for the week. This would be the 3rd mini lesson in the overall series. First, I briefly reviewed the run-on sentence concept. I made sure that students understood that run-on sentences are not simply really long sentences, that run-ons are actually sentences that are improperly combined, and this can happen even within short sentences. Next, I had written out paragraphs on a receipt paper and rolled them up. I had the students unroll the paragraphs and try to read them. I wanted the students to get the visual as well as practical concept behind the run-on sentence. The idea that students take away from this exercise was that run-on sentences are hard for readers to understand, and that it's hard to see the concepts that we're trying to express in our writing when we use run-on sentences. Readers struggle to remember what it is they were reading at the beginning of the sentence, and as writers we want to eliminate this hassle for our readers, and we just want to grammatically write correct papers. After the students read the sentences, I had them take scissors and cut the paragraph into individual sentences. This part of the exercise was meant for students to really think about what makes up a sentence and see how they can divide their paragraphs into independent, complete sentences. I wanted them to make individual sentences first so that we could move on to a second step where we work on correctly combining sentences. So then, after they cut their sentences, I actually had them correctly punctuate and capitalize the sentences that they had created. Then we moved on to combining the individual sentences correctly. Gave the students a few minutes to work together and just went around the room and checked in on the different groups just to see how they were doing. After the students had punctuated and combined their sentences, I got the class back together to go over how we combined the sentences. I asked the students how they corrected their run-on sentences. For the most part, the students responded with 3 of the 4 ways to correct run-on sentences. Then went over the 4 ways again and gave examples of each and gave them a handout with the 4 ways to correct their sentences so they could have a sheet as a reference as they move forward through their own writing and for the week as they're working through the writer's workshop. After we were done reviewing as a class, I had the students break back up into their groups and write out their revised paragraphs on a white paper to be turned into me as an exit book for the day. I also made sure to reference a section in their Writer's Ink book that each classroom has that they could refer to if they needed further help. After completing this mini lesson, the students broke back up and began peer reviewing their own writing concept we had just learned. They were meant to highlight in their papers the run-on sentences and make sure to correct them before they turned in their final papers. Overall, I really liked my mini lesson. I think that the concept was good, but the execution could use more work. I spoke a little fast, I didn't give students enough time to respond at times, and was very aware of time constraints. I felt that this was a mini lesson, but given 5 more minutes, it could have been a stellar mini lesson, and still have been a mini lesson. Also, in a real classroom, I would have used real students writing instead of excerpts from the Hunger Games. There could be a lot of confusion from taking literature excerpts, and I think that using student writing gives them a tangible example to work with. Another part of my action that could use more work was it was obvious that I was thinking ahead to the next step. As students were working on reading, I was thinking about how to explain how I wanted them to cut the paragraph into individual sentences, and so on throughout the lesson. As the students were currently involved in one step, I would be thinking about the next. I don't feel that I neglected instruction or classroom management and thinking ahead, and I think that it's good to think ahead to some extent, but I would like to be not so transparent while thinking ahead. I think this could be something that comes over time as you get more accustomed as to how to explain direction to your students and other factors. For the most part, I think the mini lesson was well planned, just not as well executed. What I liked about this lesson was the lesson was hands-on and student-centered. At times the classroom looked chaotic and there were students everywhere, but they were all focused and working. I really believe that learning doesn't have to be in desks lined up in a straight row, and I think this mini lesson proves it for me. There was a small hum in the classroom and students on the floor and spread out over desks and all over the classroom, but learning was happening. Most of the learning took place within small groups. However, the concepts and ideas were also reviewed as a whole. There were multiple ways in which students were able to practice, but they also had the support of me and their peers in order to learn. I really feel like with the gradual release model, this mini lesson still hit on a lot of those big points. Overall, I feel like this mini lesson was good, and it's something that I would definitely like to try in my classrooms next semester, and that it's something that I feel as I execute it more often, I'll get better at delivering it.